Welcome to the UW Now Live. Tonight we're discussing the implications of artificial intelligence, specifically the competition that's developed between the US and China. Our panelists are experts in computer sciences and the semiconductor industry. Remzi Arpaci-Dusseau is the director of the School of Computer, Data, and Information Sciences and the Vilas Distinguished Professor and Grace Waba Professor of Computer Sciences at UW-Madison. Mike Splinter is a two-time Badger with degrees in engineering and a co-founder of Whisk Partners. He has long-time leadership experience in the semiconductor industry, including at TSMC, Applied Materials, and Intel Corporation. The conversation will be moderated by your host, Mike Knetter.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Happy to have you with us tonight. We should have a really interesting show. As you all know, AI is no longer just a buzzword. It is really transforming industries, reshaping economies, and sparking really a global race for dominance that at this point is certainly shaping up as something that involves mainly the United States and China. And as AI becomes more widespread, we're seeing a major shift not only among tech companies in the US, but how governments are stepping in to try to shape the future and direct application of AI in certain ways. Historically, the US has led the tech world by encouraging open competition, innovation, free markets, arguably, as we've talked about on the show over the past several months, competitive forces in capitalism have really allowed capital to flow to the tech industry. Manufacturing contracted a bit, and the US became a global leader in technology. Other countries that protected manufacturing have struggled to get a footing in the technology space. But the government is actively building infrastructure, regulating exports, and even investing in companies like Intel to try to stay ahead of the game now. And so one of the things we're hoping to hear from our experts is how do they think that's going to play out? And what does this mean for the future of AI and really for all of us? So we're going to look at some of the big questions with our experts. Why is the government stepping in now? Will this help the US beat China in the AI race? How will this change what private companies do? And how will it affect new graduates and entry-level jobs? Will we need to teach people new skills for their first jobs? So I encourage you to get comfortable, grab a bite to eat and a beverage, and put questions that you have for our guests into the live chat. But we'll dive in. And I should add along the way that we're going to hear a little bit from Remzi also about what UW-Madison is doing in this space and how we intend to participate with our own students in our research and stimulating innovation. So we're going to start tonight with Mike Splinter, who has been on here before. As you've heard, he's a two-time Badger. He's a 50-year veteran of the semiconductor industry and has been involved during that time with the leading edge firms in the semiconductor industry. And he's also been the president of the US-Taiwan Business Council. In addition to, as you heard in the intro, he's a board member of Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, which is the world leading manufacturer, hands down, in that space. So it's just a real pleasure and luxury for us to have someone like Mike to open up tonight and tell us a little bit about the state of AI globally and the race that's going on and its impacts. So Mike, thanks for taking the time to be here from Nevada, I think.
I am in Nevada, Mike.
Great to have you with us, but we'll see you in Madison on Saturday, so I can't wait for that.
Well, I can't wait for that. Hopefully it'll be more exciting than last Saturday.
I'm sure it will.
Anyway, thanks for having me on this afternoon or evening for all of you. I've had the good fortune, I think, over the 50 years since I left Madison to have seen a lot of technology revolutions. Certainly the advent of the personal computer, the advent of the internet, smartphones, etc. And it kind of stuck with me. I had the chance to talk with Andy Jassy last week, the CEO of Amazon. And he said, and I told him I was going to quote him, so I'm quoting him here as AI is creating the biggest technological revolution of our lifetime. I think he meant his lifetime. He's a lot younger than me, but he should really know. Andy is the CEO of Amazon. He was the head of Amazon Web Services since its initiation inside of Amazon. AWS, as it is known today, is the biggest cloud provider and certainly making huge investments in AI and large language models, and they're thinking about how they're going to play in the inference area as the applications of AI become more prevalent over the years to come. So just thinking about that statement for a second, it really implies that AI is going to change pretty much everything, but it's going to change the way we work, the way we live, the way we play. And when you try to bring it down to something meaningful, just start thinking about, well, is it going to change medical research? Yes. Is it going to change chip research, chemical research? Is it going to change the administration of companies? Is it going to change the efficiency of companies? The answer is yes, 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 and yes. And so it will be a big change. And like the other technological revolutions, like the personal computer, which did change everything in the way we work, and eventually the smartphone, it is something that's going to happen much faster than those technological revolutions. And in the end, it'll be something we can't do without, much like our smartphones today. But one thing to realize in this race, and Mike said this was a global race, it certainly is that we are ahead. Companies have invested strongly both in AI software and the large language models and in chip design, those chips that enable artificial intelligence and enable the large language models that everyone is talking about. And certainly NVIDIA is our flagship company. NVIDIA not only makes the chips, but they make the servers, the AI servers that go into data centers. And there's obviously, I'll touch in a minute, a large number of data centers being created. But NVIDIA has gone from primarily a company that made gaming chips 5 years ago to the most valuable company in the world. And I'm sure you all saw that coming and invested part of your wealth into NVIDIA, which now is the world's first $4 trillion company and the most valuable company in the world. And if you take the market as an indicator, it certainly means that the world believes that AI is here to stay, and certainly not, despite the hype, not a flash in the pan. But if you look a bit below the surface of the AI supply chain, you see that there are significant vulnerabilities. In particular, let me be controversial here and say that we make none of the advanced AI chips in the United States. Maybe a few are now being made in Arizona, but for the most part, the processing power is made in Taiwan, and the memory chips are made in Korea and other parts of Asia. So the AI supply chain does have some single points of failure and vulnerabilities, and these are things we should be concerned about. And it's a big reason why our government and other governments, this is a big race. And I think you can make it akin to the space race. This is a big race, and you can see companies spending huge amounts of money, and I think we will see the government also spend huge amounts of money as we go forward. But to just give you an idea, last year in 2024, there were around 4,000 data centers built in the US. This year, its number is going to be closer to 5,000. I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. We are just at the beginning of the kind of compute power that we're going to need to supply the capability for all the AI that's coming. The big four, and by the big four, I mean the big four hyperscalers, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Meta, and many others, of course, are spending huge amounts on infrastructure. But those four alone are spending almost $400 billion. This isn't like market cap. This is real money going into buildings and compute power and power stations. And with all this build out, electricity is one of the limiters here that to the advancement of AI, something that we've all taken for granted for a long, long period of time, could be one of the fundamental limiters to the growth of AI as we progress. So some things that we have to think about here is as the government gets involved in industrial policy, which our government is usually not good. Well, they usually don't get into industrial policy, but this has become so important, and the competition with China has become so big that really there's no choice but to have an industrial policy. And I just make a comment. This isn't really quite new. Industrial policy in the area of AI and semiconductors really started in Trump 1, was carried through during the Biden years, and has just accelerated during these last 8 years with incentives, in some cases, tariffs and others, and not just that, but sanctions lists on Chinese companies, export controls on semiconductor equipment, export controls on certain software products. So there is a wide set of activity going on now in industrial policy. Our government really usually doesn't do it, so they're not adept at how to do it. And there's lots of problems here in that the speed of government is quite different than the speed of industry. And we can talk about that as we get into some of the questions I'm sure that you and Mike have. But as I think about it, and I said this was akin to the space race, the thing that brought the space race, the US ahead in the space race, was a big goal for the United States. We're going to go to the moon by 1969. Most people on this call weren't alive then. I remember where I was. But we need a overall goal, a measurable goal that will bring together industry, government, private sector, public sector, and transcend administration so that we really can fulfill the promise of AI and stay ahead of our worldwide competition. I just think about what a job producer this is going to be. But on the other hand, it's going to be a job reducer too, because the thing that companies everywhere and universities and every entity is thinking about first with AI is how do I become more efficient? How do I reduce the cost of my product? How do I reduce the cost of my overhead? And so jobs are going to change. Every job is going to change. A lot of jobs are going to go away. A lot more jobs are going to be created. And fundamentally, one of the reasons I think the United States is going to be the winner, continue to be the winner now and in the years to come, is because one of the key strengths of our country is adaptability. We can adapt to all kinds of change, and our people can adapt. And yes, it's difficult. People are going to have to be retrained. Some will gain, some will lose. But overall, our economy will gain. I think in the MIT report that was issued a few weeks ago, they said AI will add $7 trillion to the world economy. That's a significant amount of money, a significant impact on the world, on the United States. And I think if we are able to adapt like we have in the past, only faster in this technological revolution, we will continue to lead the world. And with that, Mike, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mike. You set this up beautifully for us, and there's a lot of questions pouring in the live comments, and I really appreciate that. Got a lot of engaged viewers, which is what we always look for. So we'll come back to Mike in a bit, along with Remzi for questions. But now I'm going to call on Remzi Arpaci-Dusseau, who is one of our distinguished computer scientists on campus. And he's the leader of the Computing, Data, and Information Sciences area, and is driving the consideration of the potential creation of a new college on campus. That's not decided, but it's something that's being discussed, and it's very exciting. And so, Remzi, thanks for taking the time to be here and tell us a little bit about how UW is approaching this seismic change in technology and how the impacts it might have on the campus.
Yeah, happy to do that. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I've been a professor here for a long time, a quarter century. And lately I've been trying to help the campus move forward. And as Mike Splinter just said, adapt to what's going on in the world. So what I'm going to talk about first a little bit is something we established a few years ago, the School of Computer Data Information Sciences, or CDIS. It was founded in 2019, and it was connecting three core departments: computer sciences, statistics, and the iSchool, all within the College of Letters and Science. And the reason we did that was we saw that there was an increasing intellectual overlap between those departments, and machine learning and connecting technology to humanity. Really, all three departments had a significant overlap in what we were doing. And since we got together, the three of us, we've been doing a bunch of cool stuff. Like we already had the biggest major on campus, computer sciences. So it's been the biggest major on campus for a while. But together we defined the data science major, a brand new major over the last, created, 5-6 years ago. It went from having 0 majors to being now the second biggest major on campus. We have a new information science major. It's the fastest growing. And one thing that's really cool that we've done is to bring the three departments together, computer science, statistics, and iSchool, each which has a fantastic history and real strengths in what they do. We raised all private funding to create Morgridge Hall. So next time you're on campus, any of you, please come by Morgridge Hall. It's just a gem of a building. I included a couple pictures on the right. Just a fantastic space to be in. But of course, we started to think about, well, what's next for us? And on the next slide, I'll start getting into that. So about a couple of years ago, we decided to look into that. And the then provost convened a panel of outsiders. So we had people come from outside to assess how is CDIS, the School of Computer Data Information Sciences, how's it going? And what should it go do next? And the panel of deans from across top universities from across the country were pretty clear in what their recommendation was that they said we should seriously consider creating a new college with a dean and have a really strong vision of where we are going with that new college. And so what I'm going to talk about is the vision we've been working on, which is pretty obviously connected to what Mike Splinter just talked about, which I'll talk about on the next slide, which is that AI is changing the world. So let's look at the next slide. And this is all going to be nothing surprising, I think, to anybody here that's on this stream. You can find 1,000 quotes like the quote at the top: AI is the new electricity. AI is certainly transforming almost every intellectual endeavor that we have on the planet, including very fundamental things for a computer scientist, like how software is constructed, and things that are very far from computer science, like how art is generated. And it's certainly having impact on the sciences in inquiry. We saw last year Nobel Prizes in chemistry and physics that were basically about machine learning and artificial intelligence. So almost every field of inquiry is being transformed as we speak, some faster than others. Clearly, universities must play a key role in this change. And I think there's so many reasons for this. There's a lot of excitement about what's going on in industry. Universities can be a partner in this, in shaping AI for the public good. There's still much new science to do in this space. We haven't figured out everything about AI and the broad field of computer data information sciences yet. So more needs to be done, and universities are great laboratories for that, as we've seen over the past many decades. On top of that, what area of inquiry across the whole campus isn't going to be shaped by AI? Finally, entrepreneurship is, of course, you can see how many AI-generated and AI-related companies there are. And hiding behind all of that is really a grand challenge. Intelligence, that thing in our heads that somehow humans have, what we consider a very general intelligence. How do we build that? What are the fundamental tenets of intelligence? Are questions that are being asked and eventually answered through research in how to build artificial intelligence. And we should participate in that. So let's look at the next slide. Fortunately, I think University of Wisconsin-Madison is really well positioned to lead in this space. In computer science specifically, which I'm close to because it's a department I've been in for, like I said, 25 plus years. We have an incredible history in CS. We've pioneered many innovations in this space. We have across the departments of CDIS, we have a strong machine learning core. We have a strong systems group, so we build chips and we built software systems. We have strong data and information groups and translational engines. In other words, people who daily work with taking computing and applying it to other domains of science. And with our iSchool, we're focused not only on developing technology, but shaping its positive impacts. Lastly, I want to say what's great about UW-Madison, and not quite unique, but almost, is that we have not only an excellent university, but a really broad university. So we study almost everything on this campus. Everybody says that we don't study dentistry and architecture, building architecture, but almost everything else. We are a land-grant university. We have agriculture and life sciences. We have, of course, all the other fundamental areas. And that makes such an excellent laboratory for understanding the transformation that powerful technologies like AI is going to have on all of those fields. So what we're seriously considering now is not a college of AI, but rather a college that is leaning into this moment and really helping drive the unit itself forward as a new college, potentially, if so approved, but also as a catalyst or an amplifier for the entire campus. And there's lots of reasons that a college will help with this. It really allows us to have very focused leadership, a dean that wakes up every day thinking about how AI and computing and related disciplines are affecting the campus and pushing it forward. We can have accelerated growth. We can, of course, do very targeted fundraising. But maybe next slide. But what's awesome about this and thinking about this is we've already been essentially laying the groundwork for it. So CDIS was a school within the College of Letters and Science that was built 6 years ago. And we've basically been running for 6 years and nurtured within the world of College of LNS, getting ready to think about this transformation. So on the next slide, and why does this work really well? Because if you look at our core disciplines, computer sciences, information school, and statistics, really that forms the basis of all the things you need to think about what's happening at the core of the AI revolution, the systems behind it and chips, the data information that drives the transformation, and the methods and algorithms. And what's that's going to lead to, of course, as we invest in it, is deep technology innovation, like the next large language model innovation, hopefully applications like the next Nobel Prize, and even societal impacts, really thinking about how to, I could say like the next amendment. What kind of public policy do we need around all of the world of AI in order to ensure that society has a positive impact from it? So on the next slide. And to be successful, I think one thing that we've been thinking about deeply, if this college does get formed, is that it must fundamentally be integrative, really bringing AI not just to students who study just computing and AI and data science and information science, but really for the whole campus. So when I think of it as not just a bunch of colleges, but rather that we're deeply connected to all the other colleges, so that our research mission, our educational mission, really has an amplifying impact on all the other great colleges on our campus. So just kind of wrapping up, I guess I'd throw out a few worries and concerns. This is more something that we can get into in our discussion perhaps, but I think natural questions that we can ask, and maybe I won't answer yet, are, can universities keep up with the industrial progress in this space? Can universities grow and invest right now, given all the federal uncertainty that's going on around funding of science and so forth? How is AI going to impact the future of education? I'll talk a little bit about that in our discussion, I think. And then certainly the job market. It has a lot of uncertainty right now. And in particular, maybe if we have time, I'll talk about some interesting work I've seen in that space by Professor Ajay Agrawal from the University of Toronto. So just in wrapping up, and I think I went quickly, but maybe that's good for discussion. I think we have a really historic opportunity here. Colleges aren't created very often. If we do go forward and create a college that's built on the foundations of computer data information sciences and really leans into this AI era that we're in, I think it'll really shape the future of the university as well as the future of the state, country, and beyond.
Thank you, Remzi. Both of you did exactly what I asked you to do. And in the comment thread, a few people have noted that I have panelists here kind of bullish on AI.
Oh, that's true, actually.
That is an issue. So I'm going to ask a few questions that people have maybe about some of the downsides of AI. And some of that, we've touched on a little bit, but first of all, Ann Culver and some other people have talked a little bit about, are these large language models the equivalent of kind of plagiarism and infringement on people's, intellectual property? And then I'd say more broadly, do you worry about AI producing incorrect or even dangerous advice or suggestions or answers to queries? And I'm on some boards where we talk about this, and boards tend to be more risk averse, and I find my colleagues on boards are always worrying about, can we really hand something off to artificial intelligence? And I often find myself thinking, were we ever concerned about the humans that were doing this before? Because it's not like we knew they were unbiased or perfect in their thinking. But could you comment a little bit about that general area of, is AI infringing on, people's intellectual property? And then also, how worried are you that AI gives incorrect answers and then we act on the bad advice and something horrible happens?
Yeah, and I don't know who wants to go first. Mike, do you have some thoughts, or I could share some thoughts?
I just maybe say two brief things. One, I hope we're not infringing on people's intellectual property, or I hope the access of data is not infringing on people's intellectual property. I don't know that, but most people who have the protected data, the data would still be protected. I have another reaction because I think this is a global competition, and one of the ways I think we have a competitive disadvantage is the privacy laws in China and elsewhere are nowhere near what we have in the United States, either personally or IP-wise. And the companies, at the behest of the government, working on AI, can access all kinds of data, and the models are only as good as the breadth of the data that they're able to access. So my second comment about incorrect answers is, like any technology, it's not an excuse for humans not to think and to check and to assess the quality of those answers, and in an automated system to understand. I guess some people call them hallucinations, that the models don't get into hallucinogenic kind of situations. But the big thing is we have to think. There's no excuse. We're going to have to think even at a higher level than we've been able to in the past, to be able to ensure that these things, bad things like we're inferring here, don't happen. Over to
Yeah.
you, Ramsey.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and then I liked your comments. Going back to the first question around plagiarism and copyrights, I really think it's a good question, and I appreciate it. I think there's a bit of this is why, for example, when we put together the School of Computer Data and Information Sciences and potentially this new college, we wanted to not just have it be only technology focused, but to also be very much connected to how it impacts society. And a big part of that is public policy, right? Public policy and laws around the new things that we're doing. And I think you're right that it's some very interesting questions get raised about when you put a text out there and then somebody, you write a blog post, which you view as you have copyright over, and then a language model or something learns over it. Like, how should we treat that? I think that's a very fundamental question that society needs to engage in. And it's one reason I think universities can play a big role. And then eventually, the government plays a big role in this too, of how to think about that and how to have frameworks around it and how to make sure that people who are contributing to the world are also compensated for the things that they do in a reasonable way. And I don't claim to have any answers in that space, but I think the question is a good one. And it's something that we have to care about at the university, and maybe in a way that industry wouldn't care about in the same way. Not that they wouldn't, not to cast aspersions. So I think it's a great question, and I think it's front and center of the types of the reasons as we think about the structures we're putting into place here and the educational things that we're doing here, that we want to think about all of those issues, not just how does the AI, how does it work deeply, but having students and faculty engaged in thinking about the impacts on society. So great question, and I think there's work to be done there is the way I would think about it. What was the second question again? It was about
can we trust the AI decisions
probabilistic,
and
right?
advice?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. And so hiding behind that is I think there's an assessment of the current technology and how the current technology works. And I was just very lucky last night, actually. I heard a talk by Professor Ajay Agrawal from the University of Toronto, creator of the Creative Destruction Lab. He's authored a couple books in this space. He's an economist, but I think, talks about AI in a very interesting way. His first book
Don't say "but" when you say he's an economist.
He's an economist, but he understands AI pretty well, I think.
That's a very hurtful speech.
Do I hear a sensitive economist on this call right here? Is that what I'm hearing, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. So he's an economist, but I actually like what he has to say. You're right. That is 100% how I was thinking.
Terrible.
So anyway, now you made me feel bad, but anyway, I'll go on. And what he had to say, unsurprisingly, like most economists, he's a genius. And what he said was, he talks about prediction machines. The current language models are such a great example, right? At the end of the day, they're taking a context of the things they've seen and the last so many words, and they're predicting a next word, essentially. It's a prediction machine. And it's doing a pretty good job of prediction, such that we're like, it's incredible. It generates grammatical English or whatever language you're in. It generates correct programs, like for coding, right? Sometimes. But it is probabilistic. And I really loved his analogy. This is why I bring it up about, he called it about prediction versus judgment. And the analogy that he made was around, actually, he looked back at the field of accounting. So accounting some years ago, according to this economist, whom, like I said, we can't really trust, but let's say we do. He said basically accounting was mostly you would learn how to do arithmetic. There was a long time ago, like arithmetic was a big part of accounting training. And then, a little bit of thinking. Then, of course, spreadsheets came into existence, and accounting, you didn't need to learn arithmetic and spend a lot of time doing arithmetic. But accountants still are useful in the world because they exercise their judgment. And a similar thing is happening with AI. And it's like in my world, like writing a computer program, 100% up till a couple of years ago, writing a computer program meant you sat and you wrote out a computer program. Like it's a set of detailed instructions, whatever programming language you're using, to tell the machine what to do about the work that you need to get done. Now you can ask a chatbot from, whether it's from OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever the leading models are there, Google, that you're using. You can say, here's roughly what I want to do, and it gives you, it's a prediction engine. It says, here's some code that I think might do that thing. But so now, like the accountant, you're not writing the code out so much anymore. Like they're not doing the math anymore, but you do need judgment. Is this the way I want to construct this program? Is this the way I want to construct this software that's maybe going to run, a database inside of a bank, something very important, something that I need to be secure and so forth. So I think, like when I'm thinking about this space, I think that's kind of how I think about, like, can I trust it? Well, of course you shouldn't fully trust it at this point, because the way the technology is built is a probabilistic engine. What it does give you, though, is an ability to kind of do things faster, better, and kind of make more progress than you would in the world where you didn't have the tools. So I think the judgment part is really kind of being played up, because the probabilistic token generation, or whatever you want to call it, is so much better than it used to be.
I think that's a great way to think about it. There's no substitute for the final review and judgment of humans and feeling like this is really a good answer, but the speed with which problems are solved, proposals are written, you name it, things can move so much faster. But let me go to another downside that was raised. Gwen Mateson raised a couple of questions about environmental issues related to this. So got all these data centers being built. There's an article in the Milwaukee Journal today about the power usage of the data centers. Just a couple of them apparently are using perhaps as much power as all the homes in Wisconsin. I'm not sure I'm not vouching for the veracity of that, but that was kind of the headline upshot of this. Where does that power come from? How does that eventually start to cause problems for the price of power for everybody else? And also potentially the environmental impact of that. And then even the jobs impact, I agree with you. There are so many things that you can do so much faster and better and easier with AI. And maybe that just means we'll do more things. But it may also mean a lot of the old entry-level jobs where you had an analyst, go out and analyze things and write a report. You don't need that anymore. So what's the entry-level job look like these days? So I think environmental issues and even workforce issues might be very important. And someone in the chat, I thought made a great point. I think it was Roger Tung. We didn't do a great job during the era where we kind of went into more of a free trade world, protecting, maybe retraining workers whose jobs were at risk because of trade. And should we have a national program to deal with that, the labor force issues? Because a lot of kids today coming out of college, the job market is much more difficult, and there's a lot of speculation it has to do with AI. So that's a lot, but basically we just kind of wonder about the environmental impacts and the labor force impacts, and what are we going to do about that? Mike Splinter, you go first.
Big questions. Mike should go first.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
The first question I worry a lot about. First, from Mike, as you know, my two interests, biggest interests, are semiconductors and clean energy. And I think the power usage in these data centers is incredible. But having said that, we're only at the beginning. So you have to be thinking that in 5 or 10 years from now, maybe just these data centers will utilize as much power as we use today in the United States. So we have to have a path forward that is environmentally conscious. I don't think we're going to get that in the short term. So it's going to be gas turbines and the like that are going to provide power. Now, some of these data centers are locating near hydroelectric plants because that's a more efficient place to locate, not far from a generating source. And hydroelectric plants are, to some degree, environmentally. I don't want to say this because somebody will argue with me on this point, and I don't want to make that point. But I do worry about that a lot. Power can be both a limiter to the growth of AI, and how we grow power can be a big impact on the environment. And in the short term, I don't see a solution in this country. Maybe other countries in Europe will certainly take it more seriously. On the jobs impact, I like the idea of training workers, but the thing that I think is it's not incoming workers that have the biggest threat. It's existing workers that are not AI savvy that are going to be under the biggest threat. In organizations, there's going to be people who don't want to do anything with AI. Those people are going to have, I think, the biggest problem and find themselves in job jeopardy over a period of time. Where I guess I'm thinking, and Remzi, I'm really interested to hear from you on this, is that kids coming out of college today are AI savvy. They know they can probably have AI write code for them. They know how to use at least think about agentic workers and how to supervise them in a way that people who have been doing it one way their whole life, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I think this is unlike other technological revolutions where, just as you said, maybe uh, people just coming into the workforce were at the biggest disadvantage. I don't think that in this case. I think they have an advantage. People coming into the workforce today have an advantage, but we have a big transition problem, which I do believe the government and universities together, maybe community colleges as well, play a big role in getting the workforce ready for what's to come.
Yeah, great points. I guess going back to the power and environment point first, certainly a huge issue. AI is very power hungry, and people are building data centers at an incredible pace in order to compete in this race. There is a sense of, the more data and compute you put into the model training, the graphs have proven this out for the past few generations of models. The more training you put in, the more data and compute you put in, the better the model performs. So of course, people are seeing what happens, how far that goes. And that'll go until it doesn't go, and then we'll need actual innovation. So, a couple of ways to approach that. One thing that's very fundamental, like for example, to computer science systems research, which is actually closer to what I think about, is we are always thinking about efficiency and how to do what we did yesterday, in a 10 times more efficient way today. That's like literally the history of a huge part of computer systems research. And it's something we've done here at the University of Wisconsin, and really all top computer science departments focus on efficiency. And what does efficiency buy you? It means you can use less power to achieve the same end. That'll also happen at an algorithmic scale, right? People who study the methods and algorithms of artificial intelligence are coming up with better ways to do things all the time. And those are innovations that are happening around the world, right? Like we saw with the DeepSeek announcement a few months ago that some folks at a company in China were doing things faster, cheaper than we thought was possible, with some really clever innovations that they were putting forward. So one way to approach it is to keep investing in research in the fundamentals of how you build computer systems, of how you write the algorithms that run on computer systems to do things more efficiently. And that's something that 100% academics as well as industry are focused on. But I think, behind the question around power, the concern is real. And I do think we have to be very conscientious of the impact we're having on the world in this work that we're doing. Secondly, about the workforce, and I really liked, Mike, what you were saying about, young people, some disadvantage, sure, about the uncertainty in the job world, but there is something better for them, which is they're growing up with the tools and they're using all this stuff all the time, as opposed to it's introduced to them later in life. A quote I saw a long time ago, I think it was around chemistry. It was, more or less, it's not that AI or computing was going to replace chemists, but it was rather that chemists that use AI are going to replace chemists who don't, right? So in science, in almost all fields of inquiry, I think if you're adept with what the tools are able to let you do, you're going to be better off than somebody who isn't. And to me, I sometimes quote Steve Jobs in this space, who used to refer, he was thinking about the name for the Macintosh computer, which they eventually settled on Macintosh, which is why you know it as a Mac. But for a while, he wanted to call it the bicycle. And the reason Jobs was thinking of it as a bicycle is because he thought of a computer as a bicycle for the mind. And the reason he thought that was, humans aren't the most, he had seen a Scientific American article where they were talking about how efficient different creatures are at moving. Humans aren't the most efficient. Like, I don't remember if it's a cheetah or a horse or whatever. Some other animal is the most efficient. But when you put a human on a bicycle, it's by far the most efficient. So we built a tool that made us the best at something, and that's physical. And his analogy was the computer was like, and certainly AI is very much like this, a bicycle for the mind. It lets us be so much more efficient than our natural self, this tool that we built, which is incredible if you think about it. And I think that's a really good way to think about what's going on in the world of AI. The tools are incredible. They let you, you can ask them any question about anything that you were trying to learn about and learn really quickly. You can ask them for help writing some code or solving some problem, and they can help you with that. They're probabilistic. They're not perfect. But if you have some knowledge and you have deep knowledge in the things that you've studied, you can really amplify what you're doing, much like a bicycle amplifies our ability to move around the world.
I'm going to follow up right back with you, Remzi, on that. And then I have a question for Mike that's different. But in the future, will people even need to get a college education? Because don't you just need to know how to write prompts into AI? And how is it we're going to not compel people, but how's it going to change what people think they need in terms of education? Because we're all sitting here probably having had a big traditional education, and you learned a lot manually, let's say, the hard way.
Yeah.
And then AI is kind of coming on top of that.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, but it would be a different thing if I didn't have any of that education. I can just type stuff in and things come back out, and maybe I just believe it. So, we've talked a lot about the importance of human judgment.
Yeah.
Is the motivation going to be there for people to acquire the rigorous education that it would take to really be a good judge of, is this answer from AI reasonable?
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I think you're hitting on a really important point. And a bit of it is, education is always, I've been an educator for, I guess, my whole kind of adult life. And, a big part of education is motivation, right? I'm always trying to drag students into, this is good to learn because you'll need it when you go out in the world, right? And absolutely, the tools, because they're so good at some things, they are a little demotivating. So I think there's an extra challenge on us right now in the world of higher ed, and as well as I think, K through 12 education, though I don't know as much about that, of course, because I haven't been in that world other than, living through it once. There's an extra pressure to figure out how to motivate and how to convince people 100% you're going to be better off learning whatever field of study, whether it's computer science, like I care about, or whatever science or humanities, whatever you're interested in, medicine, learning it deeply, because fundamentally the tools are multipliers. And you don't have to know too much about multiplication to know that if it's something's multiplying you, the bigger the base, the bigger the multiplication is going to be. So to make it a little bit more concrete, I think about it like I was talking to one of our first PhD students, brilliant programmer, rewrote huge amounts of Google infrastructure as an engineer, was a Microsoft researcher, is doing a startup right now. And he immediately was like, oh, the tools make me a generalist. Like I know this part of the technology stack and this part of the technology stack. And it used to be that if I wanted to move and do something in a new space, I would spend weeks or months learning, and then I could finally be functional. Now in a day, I'm really good in a new space that I've never been developing or building systems in before. That's an incredible multiplier, but it's multiplying on this huge base, this guy who has a deep knowledge of how technology works. So I think the challenge on us as educators is to convince students to build up those fundamental tools. And I saw a really good piece on this. It was by Ferguson. It was called the Cloister and the Starship. And it was suggesting how we should educate students in this era. And the cloister was basically suggesting when you're learning, you need to be in this cloistered, closed off environment without the tools, where you're reading and writing and conversing and debating and deeply studying things. So you learn deeply, like we've always needed to learn. You have to be with material to learn it. You can't learn it by asking like doing a search query. And then outside of those many hours where you're cloistered, it's the Starship, where you just let the students use the tools and go crazy and go really much further than they could ever go before, because the tools are such big multipliers. And I think if we're able to, build an environment like that, I think we're setting up our students for like a huge success as they go off in the future.
That's a great way to think about it. I really appreciate that. And
I like it too.
It speaks a little to, Hans Kuttner was asking in the chat, how can universities be a source of advances when so much talent is going elsewhere? And I think, we have to have a value proposition that keeps people here. But I would imagine it's getting more difficult to keep people in graduate programs and things like that because the rewards in the private sector are so high. But let me move to Mike. Mike, one of our viewers, Alex Heisel, was kind of wondering, like, do we even have to be in an AI arms race? Like, and did we sort of create this arms race with China? And, what's the end game here for what are we actually trying to achieve? What would success be in the AI arms race? Why should a normal American citizen care?
I think that's a really, really good question, by the way, Alex. Thank you for that. I'd go back 15 years or so and think about we kind of had a different world 15 years ago. China was becoming more capitalistic, and free trade was moving around the globe. And that really all changed when Xi Jinping became president of the People's Republic and head of the Communist Party. And it decided that one person can change the world. And China became a competitor, not a cooperation partner. So that brings us to the technology. And it is thought, and I believe it's true, that, and the reason our Department of Defense is investing so much in in AI today is that this will be the fundamental differentiator uh, in military, let's just call it military capability in the future. And so the country that has the best capability, knows how to apply it in the most sophisticated way, will have an advantage in building the best war machines, whatever those are at the time. And we have to be realistic about uh, not everybody wants peace, and not everybody likes America, and not everybody likes each other, and there's animosity and some real not sure I want to call them crazy people, but I will in the world that want to do us harm and are jealous of what people have in America. So this will be a competition, and I will say something that I say to a lot of people, and I said probably in the last time I was on the show. Today, virtually 100% of the advanced chips get made in Taiwan. And the United States government has to do everything it possibly can do to both deter and incentivize China not to attack Taiwan. It is in their best interest not to attack Taiwan because not only our economy runs through TSMC, but theirs does too. So there is a lot at stake. There is our entire economy at stake, and there is our entire safety at stake. So I think that's where we are and why we have to really think this is a gigantic competition and we have to win.
I don't think there's a bigger question in the chat than that one. I really do feel like that is what makes that creates the motivation for us at UW to be as big a player as we can be in the space. We do think that there is a lot at stake for progress economically and just the US standing in the world. And I think that's inherently important. And, I'm under no illusion, maybe not everyone agrees with that perspective, but I think
Sure.
That's a valid position. And, a good risk manager would say, I'd rather make sure we're in the lead than we're not in the lead. And then we find out what the consequences of that are, and they're not pretty. But I don't know if either of you want to offer any concluding thoughts about, your perspective, Remzi, on maybe what people can expect from the university in the coming years in this field and how it might impact students. And Mike, what you see for, how the US is maybe going to become more, I guess, self-reliant on some of these things. Will we be successful in making the most advanced chips, or is that game passed us by? I'd love to know Mike's thoughts on that. So Remzi, tell us a little bit about what we'll do for students, and then Mike, how's the US fit into this?
Well, and I really appreciate all the questions, by the way, and the concerns, because, at the heart of that is change, right? Change is happening in the world, and change is exciting because you see the possibility, and change is concerning because you see the possible downside. So I think the way I'm hoping we approach it, and I think we are approaching it as a university and as a school and potential new college, is to lean into the moment, because it's better to enter into these changes that are happening with our eyes open. Even if the university decided none of this was important, the world is going to keep moving and things are going to keep happening. So isn't it better to be a participant, to help shape the technology, and of course create new and positive technologies, and really think deeply about how to try to shape them as they go out into the world? I personally lived through, the internet revolution, and And a lot of the discussion back then was all about the positives, and people didn't anticipate some of the negatives. And I wish we would have ahead of time, because we could have done a better job with them. So I just view it as a university, we can do nothing other than be a reflection of the change that's going on in society and educate our students so that when they enter that society, they're the best equipped to move forward.
Mike?
Well, first, I would say, Mike, one of the things that gives me confidence that we're going to end up winning this race, if you will, is our universities. I think our universities are the envy of the world, and educate students in a way that prepare them to be imaginative and creative. And you just have to look at the number of startups in the AI space. Remzi just mentioned one of his students was now at a startup, and they're creating new ideas all the time. In the supply chain, which is where you asked the question, I think we'll resolve those kind of issues. I'm not worried about rare earth elements, or more if we have to. There's lots of rare earth elements in the United States. It's just an economical matter whether we mine them or not. So I think we'll solve those kind of problems. The problem that's so hard for us to solve is research in semiconductors, and catching up in that area. We'll be able to manufacture advanced chips in the US over a period of time, but it might be done by Samsung and Taiwan Semiconductor. I'd like to think it would be done by Intel, and Intel can catch up. But I think that's a 5 to 10 year proposition. So over these next 5 to 10 years, we do have some jeopardy. And I'm hopeful that we catch up, but we have to be prepared if we don't. And thank you, Mike, for organizing this tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, our pleasure, and thank you for taking time to prepare for this and just share your thoughts with our audience. We had a super engaged audience tonight. I mean, I do this program all the time, so I know how many people watch and how many people are asking questions. And to our audience, I've never seen more great questions on a topic than this, which means it should probably be a topic again sooner rather than later. So thank you both for a very stimulating conversation tonight. And thanks to our audience. And we'll be back next month with a topic yet to be determined, but you can count on it being pretty interesting, because there's so many things we can be talking about right now. One show a month is probably not even enough for us to cover all the things that we'd like to touch on. But thanks for being here tonight. We'll see you again next month. And in the meantime, on Wisconsin.